Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Managing Anxiety in the Storm. My name is Dr. Deidre Sorrell. I am a school psychologist, a licensed professional counselor, and your reigning Mrs. Black Maryland International Ambassador 2020. So this afternoon, I have a very special guest with me today. I have Ms. Hope Dickerson Gilchrist. She is a licensed professional counselor in the state of Maryland, and she's also the owner of Ray of Hope Counseling Services. And today we're going to talk about managing and dealing with racial trauma. We have been dealing with so much in 2020, but really, if you think about it, 2020 has brought a lot of awareness because there have been problems going on in our country and around the world with racism for centuries. People are starting to now see that change needs to happen. So today we're going to talk about these feelings. We're going to talk about what we can do moving forward. So I want to just give a huge welcome to Ms. Hope Dickerson Gilchrist. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what just sort of led you to the counseling field?
All right. I personally, the counseling field has always been something that I figured I would potentially be a part of. Growing up, I always wanted to help. I was always looking for something that was in the helping profession. When I went to college, my major was originally business because I thought I wanted to just work with children, and so I wanted to open up a child care center. And then I was like, well, I'll just go the business route and I'll do that. And then I started to take some education courses, and I was like, I don't want to be a teacher. This isn't, I just want to be able to help. And so I started taking psychology courses, and I was like, this is it. Like, I enjoy these classes. This is my fit. And ever since then, I have just kind of been focused on the mental health field and being able to help out those around me in all aspects of life. As far as my background goes, I started out working in a group home, and then shortly after that, I worked in a school, and I was like in a teacher's assistant actually. And it kind of helped me through grad school, so that the schedule was perfect for me. And then once I was done that, I became an in-home behavior modification specialist, and moved on to being an outreach therapist, working in the community, working with kids and families in the schools, in the homes, in the community. And then I moved on to become a school counselor for 7 years at a private school, but it served minority youth, so that they can have experiences that other private schools have that they don't have access to because of the cost. So I did that for 7 years, and in that process, I opened up a Ray of Hope Counseling Services. And then once I left the school, I focused on my practice full time and working with families, working with couples, still conducting trainings for teachers, and trainings for other areas as well on various topics, whether that's emotional intelligence, stress and how it affects learning, trauma, so all types of trainings of that nature. And right now I actually am doing some EAP work for the United States Post Office. So I'm kind of just in there and working with doing, like I said, doing groups and talks and trainings and coaching and parent support groups and things like that. So
Well, you are doing some very important work. Everything that you listed is so important, and you have such a wealth of experiences from that you can speak on: the schools, working with the post office, working in a group home, all of that. That is wonderful, wonderful resume that you just gave us. So just with all of that and everything that you've done, I know as a therapist myself, I'm hearing people say that they're tired and that they are feeling a bit hopeless with everything that's going on. And as a therapist, it's very difficult because I can't go into one of my textbooks and pull out a theory and pull out some techniques on how to deal with this. So it's so new and so raw for all of us. So what do you say about this trauma that everyone is just sort of experiencing, especially now in 2020? How can people cope?
Well, I'd say to people that, this is your individualized experience. And oftentimes there's no one answer for everyone. Making sure that you take care of yourself, I think, is priority. In these times, self-care should take a front seat to most things, because the consistent exposure to these traumatic events creates what we call as vicarious trauma or secondary trauma, where you're seeing these events as if you're there and you're experiencing them. So you got to be able to take care of yourself, and to tell people to back off of like social media for a while, the news,
Mm-hmm.
taking some time for yourself. It's okay to not be okay in these times. That's oftentimes, it's important. People say, I'm okay, and I'm okay, and that's a big thing. But realizing that it's okay to not be okay right now. We're going to have times where we're just not okay, and it's okay to say that, and then seek out the support that you need from wherever that comes from, family, from therapists, from anywhere that you feel solace in things that make you feel good, that are healthy for you. This is a time to utilize those, because again, things impact people differently. And when I see a video, I may not have the same response that you have. But we all are definitely experiencing something that we haven't before. We historically, we've seen like videos and things that happened back in slavery times, or back in times where there was a racial divide, and where it was so prevalent, and it was things. But now the prevalence is sitting on our lap, and so we haven't been brought up in a time where we had to practice what to do during this time. We didn't. It's like that fire drill that we've never had. We're creating that fire drill for other people, but we're in it. We're in the midst of this fire, and it's like, how do we handle it being in the midst of it? And so there's no right or wrong way individually to deal with it. It's just working through your individual self, finding ways that make you happy. Researching making sure you laugh. That's a big one too. Some laughter, some like I said, taking walks and doing things like that, things that will allow you to work within yourself and feel good, because again, this exposure, this anxiety, and all of those things that we're experiencing is real, and we don't want to let anyone take that away from us, because these times are real and they're definitely anxiety provoking.
They most definitely are. And like you said, we are in the fire, and we are just sort of just sort of chartering the way, sort of, I guess, teaching others, like you said, how this should be handled because of what we're going through,
Right.
And
Absolutely.
I was actually thinking recently, because, with us going through the pandemic, can't really, got to social distance, got to go this place, can't go this place, can't go that place. I was thinking of doing something that I did back in my childhood, which was going hiking, right? So I was thinking,
Hmm.
okay, that might be a good activity, taking my kids and my family, we go hiking. But then I thought of an incident that happened to a gentleman on July 4th, where he was almost lynched while he was hiking.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't, that's, scratch that idea. And again, that trauma and that anxiety, and it's just like you find a solution, but then it's like, oh, I can't do this, can't can't do that, can't go barbecuing, can't go hiking. It's just, I just, you feel like you're on a hamster on a wheel, just going and
Hmm.
going and going. So would you say that these situations that we've seen, that watching what happened to George Floyd, um, hearing about what happened to Ahmaud Arbery, hearing about what happened to Breonna Taylor, among others, is this traumatic in your opinion?
Absolutely. And just because it doesn't happen specifically to you doesn't mean that it's not traumatizing, because we are seeing these things unfold. So it's happening in front of us, even though it's not happening in front of us. And the it's a lot of exposure to new events. You know, we live in times now where there are ways for people to record. And so we're seeing more of what has potentially been a problem, but we didn't know because we didn't see it. And now we're able to continuously see it. And our brain can only take in but so much. And you know, one event after another, I'm sure it puts many of us in a fight or flight mode. And until that's
Mhm.
resolved, we can't even function properly. Because if your brain is always in fight or flight, what if me? What if it happens to me? What if it happens to me? What if I'm driving? What if I'm moving? What if I'm doing this? Did I say the right thing? What if I'm doing the right things? It's you can't even function properly. It almost paralyzes you to try to figure out, where do I go next? What do I do next, without feeling like uh, I'm going to be hurt. Because it's like I said, it's a repeated action. And for you know, some of us, we know that when we're in fight or flight mode, one, it affects your memory, it affects your ability to move, but that the fight or flight has to be resolved, because your fighter in your brain, your brain is telling the rest of your body that there's a fire, 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 fire. And if it's telling your brain it's a fire, and that's the loud portion of your brain, conducting or doing anything else is hard to do. So you have to resolve the fight or flight. So that's why I said you have to work then on coping skills, because you have to calm the fight or flight so that you can actually focus enough to move forward. And that would be, you know, learning techniques, learning breathing techniques, learning some mindfulness, learning, you know, ways to dig back into the things I used to like to do, whether that's just sitting down and not focusing on anything, turning the TV off and coloring in a coloring book, like taking like all the way back to old school for adults.
Oh,
You know, coloring in a coloring book, drawing, journaling. So things that channel a different layer of energy from you, but it serves as a calmer for your thought processes. So
mhm.
I think that that's important to note, that if you're feeling like I'm stuck and I can't move and I can't do anything, that's probably real. And
Yeah,
so a real way to resolve that would be digging into that basket of um, things that make me feel good, so that I can calm, healthy things that make me feel good. Because with all of this, of course, it's bringing up a lot of um, unhealthy coping skills as well. And so we want to make sure that we are checking in, that if what we're doing is not an unhealthy coping skill, and that what we're doing are things that are best, that are healthier for us. Because long term, if we use unhealthy coping skills, then we're going to have a longer term problem. So you know, the like I said, and you got to turn it off. Sometimes you have to turn. I have made it to a point where sometimes I don't watch the news, but just in the morning, and sometimes in the evening, maybe. I try not to open every video that is sent to me, because
mhm.
I can't watch it every time. I'm not in the space to take on something different. So it's just it's learning to say to people, I really can't hear that right now. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to talk about it right now. It's okay to say that to people. I'm not okay. And I'm not okay with watching a new video today. I'm not okay with watching a new video right now. So just
Absolutely.
during that time, yeah.
Absolutely. Good stuff. So now, is it possible to heal from racial trauma? And again, you know, as Black people, we have a long history of racial trauma. You know, going back to just and of course we can't actively remember slavery, but you know, there is cellular memory. There is the,
Mhm.
you know, those memories that are passed down from our ancestors, that kind of, you know, that it manifests as our intuition sometimes. So can we heal from racial trauma? It,
I think that trauma in itself is something that can be long lasting.
mm,
Even when you work on coping. And when I give people the example of 9/11, and if you ask anyone today, all these years later, what were they doing during 9/11, they can tell you exactly what they were doing. And so that's an example of how dormant trauma can lay. Even if you're not actively dealing with it and it's not actively an issue, it can sit there, and your body, your mind, it still can unconsciously react to the anniversary of. And so with racial trauma, I think it's the same thing. It's always, it'll always have you kind of looking over your shoulder, remembering these times. I think that when we get to hopefully we'll get to a place where it's much more inclusive of and that when we look at like the police and the trainings are better, so that we aren't looked at and our skin isn't looked at as a weapon, as a threat. And so that those trainings include that and understand that, you know, what a person looks like doesn't automatically make them a threat to you. So if we can get to a place where that is seen more regularly, then I think that we can get to a place where we can move forward. But I don't think it will be without any thought process of the traumas that we've experienced lately. I don't think that we'll get to a place where that totally moves away, but I think we'll cope with it differently. And, you know, like I said, I think that there'll be things that will be created that will help us through. I saw something the other day on the news where a young lady had anxiety about her dad. She's a teenager, and she had anxiety about her dad and her father. I mean, her dad and her brother going out and potentially being stopped by the police. So she created this wallet thing that's like Velcro, and it sticks to your dashboard. And so if you're pulled over by the police, you don't have to reach for anything. You just unfold it, open it, and can hand them your information from that, but it sits on the dashboard. I was like, what a creative idea.
Yeah.
And so there'll be things like that going forward in our future that will help us to feel protected, although we shouldn't ever have to do that, because the reality is we should have a right to, you know, bend over and get your ID and do those things without looking at us as we're going to be a threat. However, you know, it's things like that that will help us going forward, that'll create safer thought processes for us and a safer mentality. But I think it'll take a while, because we're still at the tip of this, and everybody has to recognize it's a racial issue going on. There's a racial divide, there's a racial problem, not just people that are people of color. That's not going to resolve that, and it's not going to help us. We have to be in communities that we feel safe in, that don't only look like us, you know, that, you know. So of course we want more communities that do look like us, and that'll be helpful as well, when we can go places and do things that are in communities that look like you, but that you are still supported whether or not you're in those communities or not.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and you know, and one thing that gives me hope is realizing that throughout all of these tragedies, it's bringing forth awareness and change.
Hmm.
And one thing, one change that I heard about is the Karen Act, and that's the CAREN Act that was introduced last week, July 7th. And Karen stands for Caution Against Racially Exploitative Non-Emergencies. And what that means is it will essentially be illegal to call the police on someone just because they're Black. For example, the gentleman who was bird watching in New York and asked the woman to put a leash on the dog. She called the police on him and sort of gave the narrative that he was attacking her. Well, someone like that, and she was arrested for that, but people will be arrested for and charged for trying to file these faulty police reports. So that's one change that I see coming from these tragedies. So
Yeah, and I think that that's a good thing, because at the end of the day, filing a false police report takes resources from other places anyway, you know, and then to knowingly, as she did, cry out, because again, this known idea that your skin color is a threat. She reached into a bag that was not good. So again, when we get to a place that we can, one, that is not the narrative, that because you're Black, you're a danger, you're a threat. That's one thing. But then holding people accountable for doing things that are wrong. So whether that's someone, a Karen calling the police, what people would say as a parent, calling the police on someone for reasons that are not, you're barbecuing in the park, or you're taking your dog for a walk, or you're entering a building they've never seen you in. Well, it's not your building, so you don't have to ever see me to, I'm at a pool and I'm swimming, and you want to know, do I have a room here? Like, and so all of those kind of things that, I think that once we get to a place where people are held accountable for doing those things, then we will have less of that. And it'll, again, help to bring down some of the anxieties that people are feeling. Because that people, even if people do make these claims or things do happen, then someone will be held accountable. And the idea that police, like I said, they'll get the proper training because they need to be held accountable as well. Yes, we do need them. We want them to be here to protect and serve, but not to just kill us because they feel that threatened by someone because of their skin tone. And so, I think that all of the support that we're having from people on these front lines that are standing out against the racial divide and wanting equal opportunities and wanting employers to add diversity to their staff. All of those things are important. And as a Black person, you don't have to feel like you have to be the one to stand up for the Black community in that. These are things that they should do automatically as well to make you feel at ease. It shouldn't be you. I mean, because it's uncomfortable to be in that space also where you have to be the one to be the voice. When in fact, they should have the diversity and they should have what it takes already to make sure that you feel as protected as everybody else that's working within that environment. So it's making sure that, like I said, there's outside sources that have to be held accountable for as well, so that we won't have things happening as often as we see them now, but because people recognize that there are consequences to the actions of harming people for no reason, that that's just unacceptable.
I agree 100%. And it makes me think of my own experiences as well. And I'm blessed that nothing violent happened to me. But I remember when I used to work in DC, there was no parking lot for the employees to park. So I had to park on the street in front of someone's house. And that's how it is in DC. That's what you do in the big city. You have 2-hour parking, then you have to move your car or something like that. I got tired of having to move my car every 2 hours, so I went to the police station and I got a temporary visitor's pass. And because I was parked in front of this woman's home, this woman was she was a white woman. She was very upset that I was parking in front of her house. And I wasn't always parking there, but I was there, maybe 2 or 3 days out of the week. So she would come out of her house and harass me. She would say, "You can't park here. You need to move your car. You don't live here. You can't park here." And I said to her, "I work at the school 1 block over." So what she ended up doing was calling the police on me, so that I couldn't use a police pass anymore to park. And not only did she do that, she called my school and reported me to the school.
Oh my goodness.
So that the principal would, have something to say to me, write me up. I could have lost my job, who knows? But why? You see what I'm saying? Why? I'm there working with students, trying to do something positive for students. I wasn't preventing anyone from parking. It was the big city. It's not like it was the suburbs where I was actually parking in her driveway or in her garage, but I was on the street. And that's kind of how it is when you live in the city. You have to understand that anybody can park in front of your house at any time, especially if there is a sign on your street that says 2-hour parking.
Correct.
So this is the kind of stuff that needs to stop. Now, my situation was very small in comparison to what other people have gone through, but it's traumatic to this day to think about the discrimination and the racism that I faced. And to not have even been supported by my school was even worse, because I got called into the office like, you know, you need to stop doing that.
Mm,
You need to stop parking there.
right,
And I had
right.
to myself, and I kind of got the reputation of not being a nice person, because my response was, hey, when I leave this school building, wherever I park is my business.
Mm-hmm.
And that was seen as me being, angry for that response. But yeah, it's a problem, and it needs to end. And hopefully, people are more um able to call out this racism. Now, this was years ago when this happened to me, about 5 years ago. But hopefully now people have an awareness and can call out this racism, and kind of understand when things are racially motivated. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And stop referring to us as the angry Black woman or the angry Black man in an environment because we speak up for ourselves. And in many environments I've worked in, I've seen other people defend themselves. But as soon as we defend ourselves, we're that angry Black person because we're defending ourselves. And we need to stop that reference because we should advocate for ourselves, just like other people advocate for themselves. And we also should have a supportive environment in which advocating for ourselves leads us to a place where people understand us and give us support.
absolutely. It's as simple as that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So, unfortunately, we have to fight so many fights that we shouldn't have to fight. We shouldn't have to. People
Absolutely.
should be able to go bird watching. People should be able to, like George Floyd, he's paying with using cash. And even if the cash happened to be, if it was a fake dollar bill, I'm sure you've paid by cash and they use a little highlighter. If it turned out to be counterfeit, it's like, oh my goodness, I had no idea. Here's my card, or here's another $20 bill. The ATM gave me or my friend gave me the wrong, some counterfeit money by mistake. You know what I mean?
And so here's the other thing though. Just because I commit a crime doesn't mean I should die. And
Absolutely.
so whether I knew I was giving it to you or not, at the end of the day, let the judge and the courts decide what happens to me. It is
Right.
not fair to allow a law enforcement officer who is not there to be the judge and jury to make a decision on what happens with your life.
Right. Why are you calling the police for that? Why not
Absolutely.
put that counterfeit bill aside, have him, and I know this could go on and on and on. Have him pay for the money because you realize that pay for the item because you realize the money was fraudulent, and then have an investigation. Why are you calling the police on that? Why
Right.
are you calling the police? And then again, why should he lose his life for that?
Correct.
Eric Garner selling cigarettes. Did it have to come to that? Did it have to
Right.
come to that?
Hmm.
Okay, I'm getting carried away here. So my last question is, what do you think is possible to create racial harmony? And if so, how could we do that?
I think that it's a mindset. And I think that everybody has to get on the same level. Which do I think that that will happen personally? No, not 100%. I think that a lot can be done to help us get closer to that. For years, we've lived in an environment where I think we thought that there was more racial harmony than there is, and lately the exposure to the racial divide is humongous. So I think that the more we work towards the racial harmony, we can get closer. But I don't think that we would ever reach pure racial harmony because some people just aren't willing to be a part of that system that supports that. And so I think that we as individuals have to do the best we can to make sure that we are contributing and that we are also taking care of ourselves. We also don't have to force ourselves to be what other people want us to be, and that be okay as well. If we make a choice to do something or not do something, don't do it because we feel like, oh, they're going to think I'm the only Black or the one that didn't because, just doing what we feel is best and healthy for us individually. And that, again, that we also seek spaces that we find that we want to support. Um, and we make sure, again, that we're working in environments that take care of us as well, and that the focal point we're not saying that they focus on us, but that we make sure that there is a diversity. There is, when I can think of many times where I've been the only person who looked like me in a room. And so making sure that employers see that this isn't diversity, having one me, that's not diverse. That is so just I think that the more we grow into places where companies and people see that they need more diversity, that they need more diversity training, they need more cultural talks and things like that, I think that we can get to a better place, just not full. I don't think that there'll be full racial harmony.
Yeah, and it's discouraging to hear that, but it's real and it's true. But I like what you said about being authentic, because I do think that as African Americans, many of us have been brought up to think that we may have caused our own oppression, and that maybe we needed to speak more intelligently, pull our pants up, pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, work harder,
Mm-hmm.
then we would be accepted and respected. And I
Right.
think we're seeing now that no, that's not the case.
Nope.
Look at Sandra Bland, highly educated. She was driving to or from a job interview or something. She was about to work at a university, and look what happened to her. So it really behooves us to be who we are and to be unapologetic about who we are.
Right. Absolutely.
To at least have that freedom, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then again, like you said, to seek out those spaces, those diverse, friendly spaces, spaces where there are allies, because there are white allies out here, lots of
Mm-hmm.
them, or Black spaces where we can be respected, and to distance ourselves from places. There's no benefit in trying to push ourselves into a place where we're not wanted.
Right. And being okay with walking away from one when you're not.
Right.
That's a hard place sometimes to be in. But no, I'm not supporting a business that doesn't support me.
Right.
So being okay with that.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. This has been great. This has been great.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Well, I just want to thank you so much for just taking this time to be on my show. This is something that really needed to be discussed, and I'm hoping that there will be more and more discussions. I mean, along with this one that I'm having, that other people will have discussions, and that we will continue to discuss this topic until we get to a point of things just getting better and staying better.
Absolutely. Yep. I agree.
All right. So before we end the show, any final thoughts?
My biggest thing is take care of yourself. Again, it's okay to not be okay sometimes. Also, being in spaces that you don't feel like people are taking care of you, it's okay to walk away from them, noticing that, we are in times where we have to focus and take care of ourselves. And, you know, again, encouraging those supervisors, bosses, and all those things to not make you be the spokesperson those for Black people, and understand that it's their job to create the culture and the diversity within an organization. So take care of yourself. And again, close off things if you have to, and regroup if need be. So those are my takeaways.
Very wise words. Yeah. Well, thank you so much again for sharing that with us. This has been very healing for me to just be able to discuss this and talk about this, even talk about that experience that I had a few years ago with my former job. A lot of people don't know that, but it was good to be able to share that with everyone. So, thank you for listening. And, just thank you for just giving us all this wisdom today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so ending the show, I just want to thank all of you for listening to Managing Anxiety in the Storm, where we talk about anxiety, but also other mental health issues and other concerns that can affect all of us emotionally. So stay tuned for the next episode, which will be coming in the future. So until then, take care. Take care of yourself. And again, self-care is very important. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye bye.